What's going on, Dub Nation? On today's Golden State Warriors today, we have a loaded show. There's a Steph Curry contract update. Anthony Slater, Warriors insider, has some insight on what Golden State's perspective is, as well as Steph Curry's as he returns back from the 2024 Paris Olympics. And on the back half of today's show, Bleacher Report suggests a Kawhi Leonard trade to the Golden State Warriors as a trade that still has a possibility of happening this offseason, according to them. We'll dive into all that as well as my thoughts. But before we do, if Steph Curry signs an extension, if Kawhi Leonard gets traded, or if any Golden State Warriors news goes down, you're going to find it right here at Golden State Warriors Today. Depending on how big it is, we might even go live here at the channel. So make sure you're subscribed and you turn your notifications on so you never miss a beat on your Golden State Warriors. And we'll get into today's show. So contrary to previous reports, I know a couple days ago we reported that Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors would resume contract talks for the eligible extension that he's in line for after he returned from the Paris Olympics. But it seems like we're going to have to wait a little bit on that, as Anthony Slater, the #1 Warriors insider, my guy, says that they're not as close as we had thought before. He said Curry is eligible for a 1-year, $62.6 million extension to his contract, which has 2 seasons left at $115.3 million. He flew back from Paris a few days ago and plans to unplug from basketball-related business for a few weeks. So any contract conversations isn't expected to take place in the near future, according to leaked sources. It'll be entirely on Curry's preferred timeline. The deadline to extend is October 21st. So with an October 21st deadline, that is actually the day before the NBA season tips off. Boston Celtics and New York Knicks, the first game of the 2024 season. The full schedule has been released today. We don't need to get into all that right now. We actually dove into the NBA Cup schedule for Golden State yesterday, but I don't need to tell you guys about 82 games. It's a long season, but October 22nd is the first day of that season, and Stephen Curry's deadline to extend for the 1 year is October 21st, excuse me. I'm all jumbled up. But if he decides not to extend on that date, he will have to wait until the following offseason where he would be eligible for a 2-year, $130 million contract. The Warriors, according to Anthony Slater, are willing to extend right now, and why wouldn't they be, right? I mean, you want to lock up Steph Curry for as long as you can and as long as he's willing to remain with the franchise. And obviously, Golden State wants to make this deal happen as soon as possible to have Steph Curry as long as possible. But the question is, does Steph Curry want to commit to a long-term deal? That is what Golden State really has to worry about, because with the lineup that they're trotting out for this upcoming season, there could be questions on whether or not Steph Curry wants to remain in Golden State long-term. So Stephen Curry could be better off ending up waiting. Now, there are some reasons as to why he would want to extend now, and there's reasons as to why he would want to wait. The two biggest for either direction. For a pro, for Steph, it's an extra year of security. He played 74 games last year, but that was the most he'd played in the last 5 seasons, right? But a con is he extends for another year, and he's locked into a bad roster. Golden State necessarily sees that they have Stephen Curry locked in for the foreseeable future, and they probably feel like they don't have to make any big swing moves to jeopardize their long-term future. But in my opinion, you have to prioritize the twilight of Stephen Curry's career, so go add a second star. But Steph Curry might have a little hesitance towards that. Golden State knows that the roster that they have in place can't win it all. They're not stupid, right? They're basketball executives at the highest level. They understand that the roster they have put in place cannot win it all. And it's unfortunate because they've tried, right? They missed out on Paul George. They missed out on Lauri Markkanen. And now they're sitting with a roster that's kind of really full of B-level depth. And it's unfortunate that they haven't put that second star next to Steph Curry up to this point. Here's more from Slater on what Golden State's perspective is. The key Warriors stakeholders group grasp Curry's sustained greatness, and team sources said there is an internal understanding that his current supporting cast can't be considered a finished product if the 2025 NBA championship is believed to be a reachable goal. And that makes sense, right? Because if you look at this Golden State roster as of right now, who is the second best player? And yes, you could argue it's Draymond Green, but who is the number 2 option on this Golden State team? Yes, Jonathan Kuminga took a pretty sizable leap last year, upping to 16 points a night, and for over the last half of the season was up to about 18 points a night on pretty good efficiency. But he hasn't shown the great ability to be able to create his own jump shot off the dribble just yet. Some good workout videos came out about him over the past week or so. So I'm encouraged by Jonathan Kuminga's potential and what he's shown us progression-wise so far. Brandon Podziemski, They have a ton of faith in him, but is he really going to jump from a 9 points per game up to what it takes to be a number 2 option on a competitive roster for Golden State? I'm not so sure. A couple of years ago, you could argue that Andrew Wiggins was up there as the 3rd option behind Klay Thompson, but I'm not so sure that he's ever going to return to the form that he was in when Golden State made their championship run back in 22. And then I included Buddy Hield here as well, just because he can have that kind of microwave scoring ability with his ability to shoot from deep, but I don't see him as a viable second option at this point in his career, really, or at any point in his career. Buddy Hield has always kind of been more of a role player, playing that role of outside shooter at a high efficiency, but not to the volume of a secondary scoring option on a playoff contending team. So from my view overall, Steph should wait to extend. Not only does he takes a little bit of a risk playing this season, and the only thing I could see is a catastrophic injury or a drastic drop-off in play, and that's not necessarily possible for Steph Curry. I mean, you just saw him play in the Paris Olympics against France, absolutely torching them over the final 2 minutes. He is absolutely equipped to carry a roster when he is called upon. But is Stephen Curry really going to be okay with the Golden State roster that he has in place if he waits another year? That gives him a season where he's going into a contract year. That gives him a lot of leverage for next offseason when he can tell the Warriors, listen, I'm on my last year of my contract. You better put a competent roster around me, or I'll go test the waters, go team up with LeBron in the following offseason and not extend and finish my career in Golden State. So I say for Steph to wait another year, gives him a little bit more flexibility. Still got 2 years left in the deal, so there's not a ton of leverage for him to go push for a better roster right now. I think if he waits, he'd be going into a contract year and say, hey, Golden State, you better put a second star next to me, or I'll see my way out in the twilight of my career. But what do you guys think? What say you? Does Steph Curry sign an extension before October 21st? Type Y for yes, type N for no down in the comment section. I want to hear what Dub Nation has to say about Steph Curry's current perspective on a contract. Next, could the Warriors land that second star? Is there a possibility that Golden State, as early as this season, could make a deal, a splash deal that vaults them in to championship contention? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Before we do, like I just said, Steph Curry carried Team USA to gold in the 2024 Olympics, and you can get the commemorative shirt right here. All the caricatures, everybody was rocking it after they won their gold medals, and you can get it right at this link below, chatsports.com/Team USA. I'm going to put that link in the comments and description of today's video to make it easy for you guys. Go get this shirt. It's dripped out. I'm thinking of getting myself one. Steph right there, front and center next to LeBron. Go get yours today, chatsports.com/Team USA. Now, could Kawhi Leonard, the 2-time Finals MVP, be on the way to Golden State? Well, Bleacher Report had an idea about how this could go down and why both teams might be interested in making a mega deal. So here we go. Grant Hughes from Bleacher Report saying if the Warriors were willing to offer Paul George a 4-year, $212 million extension, they should be just as comfortable paying the remaining $150 million on Kawhi Leonard's deal. Maybe even more comfortable, considering the Dubs need to be thinking about additions that maximize or maximally move the needle during what remains of Steph Curry's prime, even if they come with huge risks. So, yeah, at the end there, Kawhi, he is a huge risk. His availability is a major concern, and the level of play, especially after a long season into the postseason, has been in question if you look at just this past year. But the trade that Bleacher Report reported necessarily isn't the hugest risk, in my opinion. So Golden State receives Kawhi Leonard, right? And then the Clippers go out and get Andrew Wiggins, obviously the big contract that needs to be in this deal to match up for Kawhi Leonard, Moses Moody, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton II. So Looney and Payton, basically salary filler, as well as a 2028 unprotected first-round pick, a 2030, protected pick 1 through 3, and then the protection that will be headed to the Wizards in 21 through 30, and then the 2029 first-round pick swap. Now, just off the rip of this trade, the Clippers in a vacuum would laugh at this and hang up. They're not receiving anything that encourages them long-term for a deal. Remember, just as recent as this June, they declined any possible deal for Paul George, and the Warriors were offering up Jonathan Kuminga in any one of these deals. So what says that the Clippers necessarily want to make a deal with Golden State now when they wouldn't make a deal for a guy who already had 1 foot out the door? It's interesting. The Clippers are in a similar situation to Golden State, though. They lost Paul George. Now they have kind of an older roster, and they made these marginal weird moves in free agency that didn't really push them any further than they already were, which was a 5th seed losing Paul George, then adding role players. Just not a great combination for a team that's headed by Kawhi Leonard, who has availability concerns, and a James Harden, who's pretty much far past his prime as far as volume scoring perspective goes. Now, the Clippers don't own their picks in 2026 and 2028, so they're looking at a future where they don't have any up-and-coming young players. They don't have any up-and-coming draft capital. When 2026 rolls around, Kawhi Leonard might be out of there. James Harden might be out of there. They're looking at no young talent on the roster and no prospective players that can push them into playoff contention. 2028, likely the same thing when they don't have that 2026 pick. So Golden State giving them a slew of draft picks in a deal like this could make the deal work. And the Clippers have also been cited as wanting to create more flexibility. That's why they got rid of Paul George. Look at Kawhi's contract right here, $50 million a year for the next 3, and he's a 2026 unrestricted free agent. 2027 unrestricted free agent. But over the last 4 seasons, Kawhi Leonard's availability, like I said, has been in question. Only more than 60 games once over the last 4 seasons, 52 in 2020, 2021, and 2022-23. Last year, he played a lot, 68 games, but then we saw toward the end of the road there in the postseason, he couldn't keep it up physically. 2021-22, tore that ACL. It's nice that he still has the ability to have high-level production. Look at the efficiencies for Kawhi, 50% and 40 from 3. I know it's not a super high volume from three-point range, but Kawhi is a bucket getter and still one of the best defenders in the game on the wing. So if this trade works, it's a player who, if we're looking at second stars to put next to Steph Curry, is about as good as it gets. Kawhi Leonard, a 2-time Finals MVP. As recently as 5 years ago, the guy was leading a Toronto Raptors team to the NBA championship, and I still think that he is a top 10 player in this league when healthy. So if this trade is possible, go out and make it. This is the closest that you'll get to anything that would vault this current Warriors roster into championship contention, and you don't give up Jonathan Kuminga, and you don't give up Brandon Podziemski or Trace Jackson-Davis. I know this is Bleacher Report's trade, not an NBA trade, but you don't give up any of your young talent. Absolutely make this deal, but I want to hear from you. Would you make this deal? Type A for accept, type D for decline down in the comment section. I mean, they're giving up a lot, but when you really think about it, is it too much? Absolutely not, in my opinion. I want to see a bunch of A's for accept down in the comment section. And that'll do it for today's Golden State Warriors Today video. If any of these rumors come to light, we're going to cover it right here at the channel, as well as Steph Curry's contract extension, news, updates, anything that comes about your Golden State Warriors. You're going to find it right here at Golden State Warriors Today. YouTube.com/WarriorsTV. We'll see you in the next one. Go Dubs.